Welcome back to Proof of Work, the only Bitcoin podcast powered by a PE teacher who's obsessed with health and finance. I'm Jason, and today we're tackling a big question. How much Bitcoin do you actually need to retire? We're using Dale Warburton's Bitcoin retirement calculator from the Why Bitcoin show to do the math. And we'll make it real life with age, taxes, and even a bold 8% inflation assumption. Let's get this show started. Here's your Bitcoin pulse for today, July 18th, 2025. First of all, the U.S. House unanimously passed the Genius Act, a landmark stablecoin bill, now headed to President Trump's desk, setting in place transparent backing standards and CFTC oversight. Alongside Genius, the Clarity Act, defining digital assets, and the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, blocking a Fed digital dollar, passed the House, marking a major shift in U.S. crypto policy. Finally, Bitcoin hit fresh all-time highs this week. As institution-friendly bills passed, Bitcoin climbed above $120,000, fueled by optimism around regulatory clarity and treasury adoption. Now to our Fitness Fit training segment. Alright, let's break retirement down with a fitness analogy. Because preparing for retirement with Bitcoin is exactly like training for a marathon or long-term goal at the gym. Picture this. You walk into the gym and decide you want to deadlift 405 pounds or run a full marathon. You're not doing that on day one, right? First, you plan. You assess where you're at, set a realistic timeline, and then commit to a consistent training program. 5 days a week, incremental gains. Now replace that gym with your financial life. You say, I want to retire in 10 years. Cool. What's the goal weight? Or in this case, the dollar amount. You punch that into the Bitcoin retirement calculator and it tells you how much Bitcoin you need to accumulate over time. It's the same thing as your fitness tracker. It's logging your effort, showing your progress, and helping you stay accountable. One rep, one session, one set at a time. Let's be real. People who fail to train don't suddenly show up and crush a race. And people who don't save won't magically be ready to retire. That's why buying Bitcoin regularly, say $50 or $100 a week, is like showing up to the gym and getting your reps in. You may not see it after a day or even a month, but after a few years, you're stronger, you're more prepared, and you've built something that can actually support you long term. So when someone asks, why are you buying Bitcoin every week? Just tell them, I'm training for my financial future. What are you training for? And now for our main segment. How much Bitcoin do you need to retire? Let's talk about retiring on Bitcoin. And no, I'm not talking about Lambos and oceanfront mansions. I'm talking about real life. Like teacher salary, real life. There's an amazing tool I use called the Bitcoin Retirement Calculator by Dale Warburton, and I've included a link in the show notes. Here's how it works in a nutshell. It assumes compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 20% on Bitcoin's value. This is a more conservative number than Michael Saylor's projected annual growth of 29% for Bitcoin. The calculator uses 5-year blocks. From 2025 to 2030, it uses a 35% compound annual growth rate. From 2030 to 2035, a 30% compound annual growth rate. 2035 to 2040, 25%. And from 2040 to 2045, a 20% compound annual growth rate. The annual growth rate continues to decrease every 5 years as the price grows, but it averages out to 20%. You enter your annual expenses, tax rate, which is set at 20%, and whether you want to save part of your stack or spend it all. The calculator then tells you exactly how many Bitcoin you need today to fund retirement, adjusting for future taxes and inflation. Let's break this down with a real-world teacher-style example. And spoiler alert, you won't believe how little Bitcoin you actually need. So, let's say you're 35 years old and your goal is to retire in 10 years, by age 45. You want to live comfortably until around 85, which gives you a 40-year retirement. A conservative estimate. Now, let's say you think you'll need about $115,000 per year in retirement, enough to live well, travel, enjoy your hobbies, and keep up with those rising healthcare costs. But instead of trusting the government's 2 to 3% inflation number, we're using a more realistic 8% inflation rate based on what we actually see at the grocery store, the gas station, and pretty much everywhere else. And here's the wild part. Using Dale Warburton's Bitcoin retirement calculator, with a 20% average annual growth rate over time, you would only need 0.8203 Bitcoin by 2035 to fully fund your retirement. That's less than 1 Bitcoin to retire for 40 years starting in 2035. Now, how does that math even work? Here's the magic. In your first year of retirement, you'd withdraw just under 10% of your stack to get the full $115,000. And because Bitcoin is appreciating faster than inflation, each year you're spending a smaller and smaller percentage of your remaining Bitcoin. So not only do you not run out of money, your purchasing power actually grows over time. That's what happens when your money is stored in something scarce, deflationary, and globally adopted. Now I hear you. Jason, how am I supposed to get 0.8203 Bitcoin? That's like $75,000 today. Here's where DCA, dollar cost averaging, comes in. Start small, be consistent. For example, buy $50 to $100 per week in Bitcoin. Use tools like Cash App, Robinhood, Coinbase, or Kraken. Set it and forget it. On all these apps, you can set up recurring buys weekly, monthly, or whatever time frame you want. Over time, you'll be amazed how it adds up, especially if the price keeps rising. And just remember, it's not about stacking a whole coin, it's about stacking enough over time. To recap and wrap things up, today we covered how Dale Warburton's calculator works, including compound annual growth rate assumptions, why a 35-year-old teacher could retire in 10 years with approximately zero point 0.8 Bitcoin, why inflation, taxes, and realistic growth rates matter. Click on the link in the show notes to get to the calculator and use your own numbers. Have fun with it, and you may just find out that you can retire sooner than you ever dreamed of. If this episode hit home, hit subscribe, leave a review, and share with a fellow teacher, coach, or anyone thinking long term. Remember, it's not about getting rich quick. It's about staying healthy, staying informed, and putting in the work. This has been Proof of Work, and we'll see you next time.